Good evening. This is Pastor John Jenkins again from French's Chapel in Dublin, Virginia. It's Monday, March 30th, about 6 o'clock of the evening, I guess. Now, a lot has changed in the last 2 days since I brought you my last video. Listening to the numbers on the television, where they're now broadcasting that a good case scenario in this country would be between 100 and 200,000 deaths. And that's sort of sobering. In the worst case scenario, perhaps being upwards of 2 million deaths from the coronavirus, which seems to be the ongoing topic, or it's dictating the topics of the day, the news, our behavior, our actions. Still, we are pressed to go forward. Today I want to talk to you about a sombering topic called Sanctity of Life. Normally, if you know me or have ever heard me speak, I'm pretty blunt, not afraid to tackle the tough subjects, and some would say I have a little bit of a dark side, but that's just who I am. I don't apologize for how the Lord made me. If you follow me and listen to me a lot, you're probably not going to leave feeling or whistling like a bird. My goal is to make you think, and today I'm going to try to make you think as I talk about the sanctity of life, of human life. In the 18th chapter of the book of Genesis, we have the story of God sending down the three angels, one of whom we believe to be a strong representative, if not the Lord himself, to speak to Abraham about God's plan to bring destruction to Sodom and Gomorrah for their sins and for the disobedience. And Abraham, being the man he was, he began to barter with God, and it's an interesting story. And Abraham started at 50 and said, "Lord, if you find 50 righteous, will you not spare the city?" And the Lord agreed, and Abraham negotiated that way all the way down to 10. And the only thing I want to take from that story is Abraham was a man who saw the sanctity of human life, the value of human life, and to Abraham it was worth negotiating for. It was worth even standing boldly before God and trying to preserve as many lives as he possibly could. Of course, we know the end of the story. The Lord couldn't even find that many righteous, and those cities were destroyed, but not for the lack of Abraham's effort. That story reminds me of a little bit of where we are right now and where we have been as a nation. And as I said, this is an adult topic, so it's going to contain some strong comments, because I believe that we need to hear them. We need balance in our life. I look back over the last 50 years of this nation, and there was a great moral adjustment in our country just a few years ago. It was an adjustment of biblical morality that has come with great consequences, and I'm going to explain what I'm talking about. I'm talking about legalized abortion. Now, I know this is a sensitive topic, and you may find it offensive or inappropriate. I'm not going to talk about details of abortion. I'm just talking about the immorality of it. Now, let me stop here and say I personally know some people who have been faced with that choice and made a choice they later regretted, and that doesn't make them bad people, unredeemable people by no means. My topic today is the sanctity of human life, that as a moral failure as a nation and as a church within that nation, that we allowed to happen several years ago. And it was in 1973 that great case of Roe versus Wade came up before the Supreme Court. And it's interesting. Roe was not the person's real name, and by the time the decision was made, she had went on ahead and had her baby, and gave it up for adoption. Most people don't know that, but as a result of that, abortion became legalized, and we've suffered a great moral failure as a nation because of that. And I know it is a sensitive topic, but there are a few things I want you to know about it. In the world that we live today, in 2020, in the United States of America, almost 2/3 of the population that lives in our 50 states, almost 2/3 have never known a nation where abortion was not legal. Now I want you to think about that for a minute. Only 1/3 of us can remember a nation before abortion was legalized with Roe v. Wade. And so it's only logical as we get older, fewer and fewer people are going to be around to protest this gross immorality that we allowed upon our nation. And as a result of that, I think the church has suffered for her silence. Now, see, there's one thing. Now, I'm a pastor, and I get in the pulpit, and I rant about a lot of things. And you can get amens on a topic like this because everybody agrees with you. But basically, we've all done nothing or very little about it. And you say, well, we look to our politicians. Well, just let me remind you, I don't care what your political affiliation is, Democrat or Republican. It makes no difference to me personally when it comes to the ministry of the gospel. That's your right. You're an American. People died to give you that right. And you're certainly welcome to express your opinion. But since 1973, when Roe v. Wade was enacted, at that time we had a Republican president. Since then, we've had 5 additional Republican presidents and 3 Democratic presidents, and all of those have done nothing, nothing to change it. So don't put your hopes in a political party or a political figure. Because, see, one man or one woman, whoever our president may be at any given time, one man or one woman cannot undo or change what a generation set by and let happen. So this is not a political issue. This is a reflection of the condition of our nation 47 years ago, when we thought this was a good idea. Now today we have allowed, as a result of that decision, over 62 million babies. We have denied them the right to see the light of day. We have aborted them, killed them in their mother's womb. And among them have been potential doctors, scientists, great theologians, nurses, military leaders, superstar athletes, and the list goes on at what we could have benefited from had those choices not been made. So whether you understand it or not, or whether you agree with it or not, it was a time of moral failure for our nation, and we've got 62 million plus heartbeats that no longer beat, that testify to that. But that's still not what I want to talk about at this moment. It's part of it. That's the foundation. Today, these estimates that we all heard, that 100,000 to 200,000 deaths would be considered a success in the United States should this tragedy of coronavirus continue on its present course, and possibly up to 2 million would be the worst case scenario. Those are grim numbers, and ultimately most likely it's going to be somebody we know, somebody close to us, if those numbers are anywhere accurate. Today, our state governor gave us the stay-at-home order till June 10th. And it's just, I just say thank God it's springtime and we can get outside. But I just don't know where this is heading. As these numbers escalate, there's another grim reality that we have to face, and we have to face it today. And that's, they keep telling us that if these numbers are even close to accurate, that there's not going to be enough hospital beds. There's not going to be enough ICU beds. There's not going to be enough ventilators. There's not going to be enough resources available to treat people. So, with that being said, we are on the brink of another moral crisis that I believe, if possible, would be just as much or at least equal to the devastating moral collapse when abortion was legalized. And here's what I'm referring to. They're talking now, even in our nation, experts, doctors, scientists, medical professionals, politicians, leaders, at every level, they're talking about what are we going to do when we are faced with running out of ventilators or running out of the necessary equipment, and we have old people, seniors, who have lived 70, 80 years, and these machines are keeping them alive. They are debating now the reality that someone may have to decide to unplug someone who has little hope of recovery, unplug them from a ventilator to give to someone that has a higher hope for recovery. Now, we've talked about this for years, that I think jokingly maybe thinking it would never come to pass, that the day would come when maybe senior citizens would be reduced in numbers simply because of population, jobs, whatever, economics, whatever reasons we could find. But my friends, we are faced with that today, March 30th in the year 2020. There is actual deliberations going on. You can follow it on the news. You don't have to believe me. Not just in this country, but other countries around the world, where they are seriously considering that we may get to the point to where Grandma or Grandpa or Great Uncle Bob or Great Aunt Sue may have to be removed from life support to give a younger person a better chance of survival. That is a sad day that we find ourselves in, if that ever becomes a reality. Can you imagine the uproar? Can you imagine the protest? Who could make such a choice? Yet that decision may be forced, and people may not have a choice whether they make it or not. That may be medicines that, hey, if you're 60 or 70 or over, you're not going to get them, because the 40 and 50-year-olds, the people who are still working, who are still producing, who are still contributing to the economy, they need it. And we may begin to lose our senior citizens at unspeakable numbers if this becomes a necessary practice. Now, you may think that I'm just X-filing this thing, but I'm not. I'm speaking to you the truth. This is a consideration that is actually being deliberated today, is who will get to health care when our options expire, when we run out of medical equipment. Who will be preferred to be treated? Someone who's young and healthy and productive and contributing to the economy, contributing to society, or someone that's old on a fixed income, who actually takes more to keep them alive than what they can generate back into society. That's where we're headed. And that will be the second moral collapse of this nation of great magnitude. Now, we can forget about all the issues we've debated about same-sex marriage and homosexuality and all these other things that the church believes are moral shortcomings as far as biblical principles are concerned. All those will become secondary when people begin to decide how long we can live, if it comes to that. Now, the irony of this situation occurred to me today, and I know this is somber and probably not something you wanted to hear on a Monday evening with everything else going on, but like I told you, this is just who I am. This is how I see things, and the Lord made me this way for a purpose. So I try to call it like I see it. But there was, it occurred to me as being ironic today. I was driving home from a funeral. My wife and I conducted a funeral for a precious old saint who passed away. We had to do it outside. Had to do it on a mountaintop where the wind was blowing. And we were on our way home, and these thoughts were in my spirit, and I stopped and I told Millie, I said, I just had such an ironic thought in my mind, and I shared a few of these statistics and things with her, and I said, isn't it ironic that Roe v. Wade was passed 47 years ago, and it was passed by a generation of people who would have been, at that time, a minimum of voting age of 18 and above, which would put them at, 18 all the way up to your seasoned people already in their professional position, or politicians or so forth, but no less than 18 up to whatever. But if you add that to the 47 years we've had Roe versus Wade, and we've killed 62 million unborn children needlessly in this country, then isn't it ironic that it's the people that are age 65 and above, people who would have been the generation that sat back and let Roe v. Wade come into play, only yelled just a little bit, never could have imagined it would escalate to where it is now. But isn't it ironic that those 65 and above today would have been the very people that allowed that to happen in 1973, and now 2/3 of the population of this country doesn't remember a nation without abortion? It's so commonplace. It's no big deal to them. It's what they've always had, what they were brought up in. And so they're primed perfect for the opposite end of that same generation to be the ones that the machines may be taken away from or denied. I don't know. It's just how I see things. It's a little scary. But that's a reality. This coronavirus is taking a lot of lives. It's shown us already. It can take movie stars. It can take country and western singers. It can take babies. And it's taken senior citizens, and we're running out of, according to the news, if you can believe the news. No matter what news you watch, they'll say, we're running out of medical equipment that's necessary to take care of this thing, and the very generation that witnessed and sat by and let the first great moral collapse of this nation occur with abortion may be the very generation that suffers the next moral collapse when we start weeding out our senior citizens and giving our health care to the younger. Well, that's just my thoughts today. Maybe a little grim, a little sobering, but as I said, that's just who I am. I want you to think. My goal is to provoke your thought. But folks, we need to pray. We need to trust God. We can't trust any other. We need to look to Him as the author and the finisher of our faith, and grab a hold of Him and never let go. He knows what's going to happen. He knows what's going on. This is a tough season we are in. And hang on to your faith, stay in the scriptures, stay on your knees, stay in the presence of the Lord, and know that whatever comes our way, we got a better home waiting for us than this one. We who belong to Christ have the hope of eternal life in Him. And so that's what we trust today. God bless you. Have a wonderful rest of your evening. And hang in there. Stay tough.